Our second speaker for tonight, again, fantastic too. Thank you so much for coming. Is Dr. Lawrence Kuznetz. So Dr. Lawrence Kuznetz is a 40-year veteran of the space program with advanced degrees from Columbia University and the University of California, Berkeley, right here. Right. He was a flight controller during Apollo, helped build the space shuttles, and was life science experiment manager for the International Space Station. He's taught at UC Berkeley, holds 8 US patents, is a private pilot, and an author of nonfiction, fiction, and children's spacesuit book on Amazon. His guest appearances include The Tonight Show and similar venues, but his favorite hobby is playing keyboard in piano bars and on cruise ships. Quite the wide range here. And so he will be telling us all about MarsSuits today. So please, take it away.
Thank you all for coming this time of night. This may appear to be an unusual topic, unusual title. And you're going to wind through a whole series of years. We realize just why I'm saying what I'm saying. So we have, over the decades, NASA has had this credo up here, like you're reaching your grasp. I've got a class I'm teaching some of the students in here. It's called From Earth to the Stars in One Giant Leap, and they're actually building a human mission to Titan as we speak. They're in the middle of doing that, and they've probably seen this half a dozen times. So don't worry about it, David. It's one more time you'll see it again. Right? But I mean, it means that whatever you think you can do, you can probably do more if you just have the audacity and the feeling and the courage to do it, and then just let your reach exceed your grasp. So this journey of mine started a long time ago for this particular topic with a rule that was passed in 1967, Article 11 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which is in force today, which declares that all spacefaring nations must avoid harmful contamination from the introduction of extraterrestrial matter. Now, if you think about what that means, it means two directions. It means avoiding it from forward contamination and avoiding it for backward contamination. Forward contamination where you're going and backward contamination when you're coming back, right? So you've probably seen some rudimentary attempts that have been made, or some attempts that have been made to provide planetary protection. And it's not easy. So my first experience came when I was a pup, right out of grad school when I was really young. I was young when I graduated Columbia, and I came to NASA and they said, we want you to design a post-landing ventilation filter to stop moon bugs from coming back from the moon for Apollo 11. Now, I thought that was really cool. I mean, what are they giving that to me? I don't have any experience in any of this. I don't know what any of this means. I've just graduated from engineering school. And it turns out the reason they gave it to me was because nobody really believed in moon bugs, and they had to give this thing lip service. So they picked somebody who wasn't really doing anything and said, well, you can do that because it shows at least we paid some attention to it. So to show you how kind of absurd the whole thing was, I didn't know it at the time. But my post-landing ventilation system was right here. It was filters above the command module so that when they landed, anything that might be inside would be filtered before it got outside, right? So, and they were bringing back stuff. There was moon dust in here, there were spacesuits in here, the astronauts in here, any kind of contamination. So this filter, which I did as much homework as I could to find the smallest millipore filter available at this time to stop everything from getting out. That all seemed like the right thing to do. Here they landed until the Navy SEALs came and extracted them from the command module to bring them home and opened up the door. So the door's open. I'm saying, well, okay, so that was a silly task, but at least somebody appeared to be taking an interest. So planetary protection efforts for the years, once they got out of this situation, they were airlifted to an aircraft carrier that you can visit. It's got a display. The USS Hornet in Alameda has a whole display of all of these events that took place, because that's where the Apollo 11 crew landed. And they got into these garments called biological isolation garments. And then they were picked up in those garments on the deck of the Hornet and put into this MQF, or mobile quarantine facility, which is an Airstream trailer. And they were locked in under quarantine. And here's President Nixon saying hello to them after they got back. And then they were flown to the Johnson Space Center. And when they got to the Johnson Space Center, they were put into this building, the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and that's where they stayed for 2 weeks. And it's a very interesting facility. Where they stayed was kept at a lower pressure than the rest of the building. So nothing was going to get out, something could get in, but that's okay. And that's how all of this was done. And everything that they produced was incinerated, if it was feces material, or it was boiled away if it was urine. All this was done, things that they wore. And that was an attempt to make sure there weren't really any moon bugs. And after 2 weeks and 3 missions, Apollo 11, 12, and 14, it was determined there was no evidence of moon bugs. So they could stop this charade of quarantining the astronauts for 2 weeks at a time. But the building has a fantastic reputation, because it's not only where the astronauts came, it's where the moon rocks came. It's where the spacecraft were docked after they got back from landing. So that's the human part of it. The non-human part of it, or this represents backward contamination, and this represents forward contamination. So here you see Curiosity. I think that's Curiosity rover, and everybody's wearing a clean room suit in a clean facility. And the best attempt is made to keep everything sterile inside this building. And that's how this works, for the most part. Now, you may have heard some talk about the Mars sample return mission and the meteor sample that was taken back from a comet, and great precautions that were done when they were landed to make sure nothing got out, because we don't know what's there. So these efforts are ongoing and improving. But this rule, Article 11, is still in force. And it's going to get much more important, as you'll soon see, to keep it in force as we proceed further, because we might not have any moon bugs where the Apollo astronauts went. That doesn't mean anything about other places on the moon or other places we might visit. So it's not that NASA didn't try, but planetary protection itself is very hard. We all know that, because we've just gone through a terrible pandemic. And we know how hard it is to stop COVID and the other virus-like materials. But when it comes to spacesuits, it's super hard, super hard. And how do you know that? Well, here's a picture from Life magazine of the Apollo 12 mission. And you see here, Alan Bean is surrounded by a misted envelope of stuff getting out of the spacesuit that's going all over the moon. So this is forward contamination invisible to everybody right here. So if it's getting out, it can get in. And well, how would you make a spacesuit that would stop that? Because there's all kinds of things going on in a spacesuit that could cause these kinds of things. But you could comfort yourself by saying, well, we saw no evidence of any moon bugs in the Apollo missions. But if you know anything about the upcoming Artemis missions, they're going to a different place in the South Pole where there's ice that has been around supposedly for billions of years, that came from we don't know where or what's inside that ice. And then you get to a place like Mars, which is a whole other place. And you know that the chances of extinct life, planetary contamination, pathogen spread are much higher. So now you really have to think about this more seriously. And that's what led to a project that I started right here in 2012 with a class. I said, how would you design a spacesuit to stop this from happening in a place like Mars? What would you do? That would conform to Article 11. And I'm going to take you through a process. So the process is called the HyperNet paradigm. And the purpose of the HyperNet paradigm, it's a project-based learning technique through enhanced internet networking. A lot of words. It works through a university, industry, government, and public synergy. Who can use it? Anybody. And what skills are needed? And anything you can think of. So that covers what on a global scale it is. So what does it really look like and how does it work? Works like this. You take a project. Now, this is MarsSuits, right? But it could be anything. It could be cancer research. It could be learning math. It could be AI. Any topic that you want to pick can fall into this way of looking at things. What you do then is you break it into pieces. As many pieces as you can think of. So start thinking about a spacesuit. What kind of pieces would you break a spacesuit into that come to mind? Well, of course, there's a let's see, there is a pressurization system, there's temperature control, there's life support, there's materials, there is helmets, there are torsos, there's the portable life support system, we call that PLIS. Then there's other things, power systems, sensors, displays, all these different things. You can think of a whole bunch of things. You start putting them down into this elements. Then the next step you do is you simplify these things. You combine them. And they're combined into something that back in the day we called this work packages, and I decided to call them work packages again. And so here you see the major work packages of a Mars spacesuit. And these guys that are working on the mission to Titan have major work packages in my class of Astronomy 9 of a mission to Titan. Same kind of idea, work packages. So here they are. You have a helmet package, a torso package, a portable life support system. You have gloves, boots, and miscellaneous. Then you have materials and soft goods. Then you have software. And then you have all important logistics and funding and media. And then you have, right at the top of the heap, some group whose responsibility is integrating all of this together. A band leader, an orchestrator, right? And that's what their job is. So once you have this organization like this, then what you start doing is you're recruiting a talent pool. Now, in the beginning, when we did this, we just had some students from UC Berkeley, but then we got some students from Stanford and Rhode Island School of Design and some other students, and then the public, and started people wanting to put their names in the hat. You know, this sounds interesting. And there were no restrictions. Important to know. There's no barriers to entry into this system. So we had Portland State, UC Merced, Final Frontier, Paragon Aerospace, a bunch of people from that. Now, these are not even though the organization names are down there, the organizations themselves, like NASA Johnson Space Center, they're not part of this. That represents people working there who said, you know, I'd like to get involved, I'll help. And that's really what it is, I'll help. University of Finland had a whole bunch of students who are really excited about this. So now you have this. The next step is where the rubber meets the road. So keep in mind these blocks, these work packages here. It's eight blocks. And then look at this next slide. And here you have the blocks again, right? And now you go to the talent pool. That can represent a lot of people. And you ask this talent pool, what floats your boat? I don't care if you're a freshman. I don't care if you're green or red or blue. I don't care if you're a PhD. Just tell me what floats your boat. Which one of these floats your boat? And you form a team. And each team is comprised of some people from the university, some people from the public, maybe some people from high school, industry partners, and they're working on that block. And then you have another team working on that block. And they're all coming from this talent pool that you recruited. So you have these teams, each one responsible for the work package. And then you kick the whole thing off. You start it, right? Now, if you're at a university, you can do this easily by a semester basis. If you're in industry, you could do it by some other time basis. It's up to you what the time frame is for the cycle. And I say cycle because that's how this works. Because at the end of cycle one, each team is responsible for a report. So they're given a baseline. You want to get to Mars? You want to build a spacesuit for Mars? Well, here's some things you should know. And that's your baseline. Now go off and study it and produce a report. So they produce a report. Now, you'll notice you are not going to build a spacesuit torso without a helmet. And you're not going to build either of these without a life support system or any of these things. So the communication horizontally is crucial, right? And so all of these are producing these reports. And then they come into a big final report. And what happens to the final report? It comes up this hopper. And it goes to the first team I mentioned, which I call steering committee. And their job is to sort through it and get expert opinions. So now they have peer review input by designated experts. And they give this thing a reality check. Okay, it's got a reality check. What happens next? What happens next is step 2. The new group that comes in gets the results of step 1. That's where they start. The third group gets the results of step 2, et cetera, et cetera. And this could go on for years. Because if you're building a spacesuit, I can tell you, you're not going to do it and get qualified for spaceflight in less than 10 years. That's the name of the game. And you can pick any project you want, but this system is evolving as you go on. And the other thing that I would add is when I did this here at UC Berkeley, you could take the same course. It's a technical elective. You could take it as a freshman. You could come back as a team leader, as a sophomore. You could come back later and do it as a master's degree. You could come back and take it multiple times because it's always evolving and getting more sophisticated. And the whole time it's taking place, you're getting to know how these things work, how you're part of a system. And so my students who are here today and observing this in the class that I'm teaching will tell you they're not students. They are card-carrying members of a startup called Humans, HBOX, Humans Exploring Beyond Planet Earth. And that's the mentality that this has to have. You're not here to take an exam and get check marks and grades. You're here to be part of a team, and your responsibility and your grade is how you do as part of that team. And if you fall down, you're hurting everybody else, not just yourself. So that's the essence of how the system works. So 2012 was the start. One of the first products was this document, which you can find on Amazon, Spacesuits and Life Support Systems for the Exploration of Mars. It became a National Research Council postdoctoral report. The second level was this one.
Envisioned a colony of humans living and working on Mars. Are we ready to go?
No.
Okay. These students are learning what it takes to travel to and live on the red planet. 25 years ago, this would have been a course in science fiction. Now, undergraduates majoring in everything from political science, astrophysics, computer science, engineering, astronomy, molecular biology have come together for this class at the University of California, Berkeley. Students share a passion.
I think my generation should go for sure.
I always wanted to be an astronaut since I was really little.
Yeah, I for one would love to see humans go to Mars.
You want to go?
Yeah, I'd like to go if they can send me.
Really? How many of you would want to go to Mars? Good to know now. The class is split into groups. Each takes on a problem that even NASA has yet to solve. What to wear on Mars? According to these students, it's not the 350-pound spacesuit that astronauts wear now.
This is an incredible suit. It's really a work of art. Unfortunately, this art will not work on Mars. First off, it's way too heavy.
Because there's gravity on Mars. Students designed this 30-pound suit instead. The outer layer protects against UV rays and sub-freezing temperatures.
Mars is a place that is very, very cold. It's a lot like Earth. It has seasons, it has gravity, it has air pressure, much less gravity, much less air pressure, but it's also very, very cold.
The suit is equipped with oxygen for
That was Rev 2, and then here, Rev 3, Rev 4, Rev 5 iterations. Here's a suit up at the Chabot Science Museum being demonstrated there. And this continued until most recently. So part of the objective of any research project, you do a literature search. So these students were responsible for looking at what's out there and saying, well, is it suitable for Mars? So they looked at all the suits that have come before it. So here you see the Apollo suit. Here you see a NASA Ames Research Heart suit. Here you see a space shuttle suit. Here you see more modern versions, the Z2 spacesuit, and things like that. And you're probably aware there's a suit being developed for the Artemis program by a company called Axios. So all these spacesuits were looked at. But these are just NASA designs from 1969 to 2022. You don't want to leave out industry because industry is also producing spacesuits. This is the Boeing Starliner suit, and Starliner, after 15 years, 12 years, whatever it is, finally got off the ground. And Sunny Williams is where she's wearing that suit right now, inside Starliner. And then a friend of mine from MIT, David Newman, designed a suit that's made entirely for fabric, by fabric, and it squeezes your body into fabric. And then you have a SpaceX suit, which you've seen some of these by the Dragon. And then you have NASA's latest, we call it the XEMU. This suit, after costing several $1 billion, it ran so much over budget that the Government Accounting Office canceled the entire project and took it away from NASA and gave it to private industry, which is why it's now in the hands of Axiospace and Paragon Space Development Company, and still has not come out of the hatch for a human landing mission, which is supposed to take place in 2025. That will not happen because one thing about spacesuits is once you have a final design, it passes what we call critical design review. It has to go through extensive tests inside vacuum chambers, and you cannot hide that information. You cannot hide that data, and there is no suit that's been available for those kind of tests. So we're looking several years before a suit would be certified to even go, much less all the other things that could go wrong with the Artemis program. Well, since inception, there's a lot of people, a lot of university people that have contributed, astronaut advisors, government, industry, external advisors from places all over the country, because the only requirement to get involved in this is passion. I want to do this. I've got something to offer. Right? And after all these people looked at all of this information that was available and looked at what Mars is, they came up with these conclusions. All those suits that you saw, they could look pretty, but they're too heavy, they're too expensive, they're too complicated. They will not function on Mars, and they provide no planetary protection. By the way, you should know when a suit is designed to go outside or extravehicular versus inside, intravehicular. And you can almost bet that if a suit looks pretty, it's not designed to go outside. That suit right there on SpaceX, that suit is only meant for an emergency inside Crew Dragon. You cannot go outside in it. These Boeing suits here, same thing. You cannot go outside. SpaceX is working on a version of this that connects with an umbilical inside, leading to the Dragon to provide life support. But it's still, that's called an EVA suit. EVA suits carry their own life support on their back, and that's important. Yes.
What is the EMU?
Sorry, extravehicular mobility unit. Good, you asked me that. That means it's the spacesuit itself, plus the backpack and the life support system, plus all of the other equipment, and there's plenty of it. There's gloves, there's boots, there's cameras, there's all kinds of equipment that you wear, which balloons the weight up. So that was the conclusion. None of this will work. And at the end of the day, size matters. So take a look at a person inside these suits. The person is the smallest part of those suits. Those suits are big. Here's an example of a 150-pound person and a 300-pound spacesuit without any of this peripheral stuff or the helmet on. These are big things, and they weigh a lot. And they all violate what I call the holy grail of Mars spacesuit design: mass, gravity, thermal control, and survivability. So what does that mean? It means that a 350-pound suit might work on the moon because it has only 16% gravity. It might work in low Earth orbit, which has essentially microgravity of close to zero. But on Mars with 38% gravity, you would be like a turtle on your back and you wouldn't be able to get up. Be completely unusable, right? Second thing is a puncture in all of those suits. Significant puncture, your lifetime is measured in seconds. A third thing is, which is where we started this whole thing, none of those suits provide planetary protection. There's not even an attempt to provide planetary protection. So Houston, we have a problem. What do you do about this if you go into a place like Mars and some people, some very serious people are going to enforce Article 11 for reasons that are much more significant in the present than they were in the past. So the conclusion was, after looking at this for all these iterations in a hypernet paradigm, is place matters. Yes, size matters, but place matters. Mars can help. Why can it help? Because unlike the moon or low Earth orbit, it is a planet with seasons, weather, and diversity. It has soil and topography like our own. It has an atmosphere and a pressure from that atmosphere. And you can leverage that environment. Now, how would you leverage that environment to build a spacesuit? Let's take a look at the environment. Here are some of the major landing places of the last 4 rovers, Spirit and Opportunity and Perseverance and Opportunity. You see, they cover a wide range of Mars and surface area. Let's look at some of these places. Widespread frost at Utopia Planitia in the north. That's Viking 2. Here you have rocky terrain. Undulating plains. And you can see the footprints of, I guess that's Spirit Opportunity as it got off the resting pod. Here you see majestic craters. Very rock-strewn plateaus. It looks very calm, not boulders anywhere. It's a pretty smooth place, right? Flowing liquid water. This is an interesting one. I'll let the scientists who's behind us talk about it for a second.
And it's all along the north-facing and west-facing rim of this crater. You can see the black arrows point to many of these on the left. On the right is this animated GIF, and it shows the sequence where they start to form in the early summer. They grow either gradually, very gradually, or incrementally. Then they stop growing and they fade. Then they disappear. They're gone entirely for most of the Mars year. The following Mars summer, new features appear and grow that are very similar.
So this is as close to the smoking gun of catching liquid water in the act as we've come. So, but there are plenty of other things. For instance, when I say liquid water, how about ice? Ice-filled craters more than 50 miles across. And then we get frozen carbon dioxide, limestone deposits at the South Pole, ice caps at the North Pole, limestone deposits at Gale Crater, rapidly moving dunes. This is a beautiful environment. Here you see Curiosity on the way to Gale Crater, which was found to be at one point was probably filled with a large lake. That's Mount Sharp is in the center of it, and here you see it's climbing up this terrain and getting up to the top and taking a selfie along the way. This journey. Here you see May 2017, and that was Curiosity. And then you get, of course, Perseverance and Ingenuity helicopter doing similar things. Ingenuity really captures the word, because just imagine, would you be able to think of something like this, to drop this off sky crane, to drop off a lander or a bouncing ball? Would any single person think of that? No, that happens when you take some very smart people, put them in a room, lock the door, nobody's the boss, they're all equal, and they sit there and brainstorm. That's what happens. I'll ask you, how would you design the space station to look like it does? The International Space Station? What the blazes is that? I mean, so all these things, right? That happens, that is the peak of human ingenuity. When you have that many people working together in a conducive environment, which is what I had hoped to capture in the hypernet paradigm. Then you get to look at some places on planet Earth and you say, whoa, oh, that's Mars. No, that's Namibia. That's Petra, Jordan. This is very close to home in appearance. But you wouldn't want to go out the door because you'd last about 10 seconds. So what's the lesson of all of this, looking at this environment? If you want to design a spacesuit, remember seasons, weather, soil, topography. Use the environment. Think of what we do on Earth. When you go to Miami, you put on a bikini. When you go to the Arctic, you put on a ski jacket. Dress for where you go. Now, why is that important? Because every spacesuit up until now is built like a thermos bottle. It is designed to not care where you go. It's a big, heavy thermos bottle with layers and layers of protection. So it doesn't care that when you're on the moon and you face the sun, the front of you is 250 degrees above zero, and the back of you is 250 degrees below zero. It doesn't care. It's a thermos bottle. Thermos bottles are big, heavy, expensive, complicated, bulky. They're all those things. But Mars isn't that place. So why would you do that? So after looking at all of this and looking at all these constraints, those in this program came up with this very unusual design. A two-gas open-loop flow-through system pressurized by the Martian environment. That's a lot of words. But what does it really mean? It means that right at the top is planetary protection. We'll get to that in a minute. There is a neck down that separates the neck from the torso. And oxygen pressurizes the helmet, but the atmosphere pressurizes the torso. Just imagine you're walking around in a spacesuit that's got the atmosphere of Mars pressurizing it down from the neck down and oxygen from the top up. And of course, you don't want to get any kind of leaks between one and the other, especially that atmosphere coming up, because who knows what's in it, right? But also, you want to keep it, we use KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You've got to get the mass down by half. You've got to provide puncture protection, radiation mitigation, and planetary protection. That's what you want this to do. So let me show you how this looks in schematic fun style. You see a compressor. It's taking the Mars atmosphere and it's pumping it into the suit, pressurizing it, and then it's exiting. So after the suit is pressurized, it's exiting. And up at the top, this neck down, oxygen is coming in a separate loop. Right? So this is very unusual, but it has an inherent benefit. If you are pumping this in from the outside and then pumping it out through a valve of some kind that regulates the pressure, that enabled you to put a microbial filter right at this point and right at this point. So automatically, this design gives you the ability to filter anything that comes in and anything that comes out. And depending on that filter, you can provide planetary protection. And right now, we're using super HEPA filters for this, which can stop 1/10 of a micron, which is actually smaller than an individual coronavirus size. But the point of it is, it's designed in such a way to be evolvable and improve with time. So you can unscrew it if you get better filters. You can screw them in. So let's take a little departure here for a minute. You all know science works in very funny ways. And sometimes things are discovered that weren't meant to be discovered. You're studying one thing, and you get another invention entirely, like penicillin. The objective of Madame Curie was not to find penicillin; it was to do something else. Am I the right person? Yeah. And then the microwave oven, Velcro, discovery of the Big Bang, Teflon, vulcanized rubber, coke, radioactivity, that's Curie, thank you, cornflakes, anesthesia, the list goes on, right? Of things that were discovered while we were studying something else. Now, when it comes to NASA, this list is almost endless. And very little of this seems to have anything to do with the space program. Packaging and miniaturization technologies, yes, exterior paint. Do you know that when you paint your house in East Coast, that paint came from exterior coatings that went on spacecraft, because when a spacecraft is in space and looks at the sun, there's great expansion and there's contraction. Well, how do you minimize the expansion and contraction? And you have to have coatings to do that, the same way you would want to use that same idea to minimize expansion and contraction of roads and sidewalks of your house and the roads in the East Coast, right? We want that, and that's what's happened. How about, did you know that grounds today use epoxy that came from the space shuttle tile epoxy? Medical breakthroughs, pacemakers, lightweight materials, lots of stuff, lots of crop management, protective clothing, Earth observation, accident, fatality reduction. NASA has an agreement with NASCAR, the Automobile Racing Association, to actually outfit those cars with all kinds of sensors to determine what the forces of gravity are when the massive accidents happen, so that they can take that technology and put it inside the way the spacecraft are designed for landing a water landing, land landing, and to mitigate those G-forces. So that's an ongoing relationship that takes place. Just want to get this across, all this cross technology that goes back and forth. Which is why, in the midst of the pandemic, when I was sitting there moping like everybody else, what am I going to do? But still working on the MarsSuit as best as I could, this light bulb moment occurred. Could you not use the same technology that came from building planetary protection into a spacesuit into a pathogen prevention suit on planet Earth? Could you do that? And it became clear that you could. And that led to what we call the MQ, or mobile quarantine suit. I think you're beginning to get the picture how going to Mars might save your life on Earth. It's this long, winding road. So you can see here's escaping microbes. Here are microbe filters at the inlet and outlet of the MarsSuit. And this ends up into a version of a PPE suit that ends up looking at something like that. And the secret is these filters in this system. And so I have to start this out by saying there was lots of controversy about masks and mask mandates during the pandemic. And at the end of the day, the reason there was controversy is because no two people put a mask on the same way. On top of that, there are all different kinds of masks. And when you look at it, there are so many opportunities for circumventing protection that it's almost laughable. Very few people go to the level required to attach a mask in such a way to prevent COVID from getting in. So that's why the mandates were so controversial. Not that mask doesn't work, it's just as difficult. So one of the first things, the requirements of this suit, it had to have a barrier to entry and a barrier to exit. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. It had to have, we use these acronyms, PFE, face-to-face exposure elimination, knowing that most contamination and most pathogen transfer takes place in hospitals or between people that are facing each other. You had to shut off any possibility of face-to-face exposure. You had to be able to get into this easily and out, like in 60 seconds or less. Not fooling around with a mask, and you had to be able to get into it only one way. It had to have dexterity, ease of motion. Let's see what else it had to have. Oh yeah, it also had to have the ability to sterilize it and use it more than once. So all of these became requirements. And then, well, who might use something like this? Well, the obvious thing is almost everybody, if they have any kind of fear at all. But the major ones would be like healthcare, schools, transport, hotels, individuals, military, hazmat, identifying and isolating positive individuals. But ultimately, the purpose of this is to stop a rapid outbreak, something we don't know about. So the way to stop a rapid outbreak is within hours of an identified outbreak, there will be a place where 500 of these suits are delivered in less than 10 hours. Everybody in this radius will be required to don that suit. And after a certain amount of time, because nothing can get in and nothing can get out. Those who've managed to be infected will develop symptoms. And those who haven't won't have symptoms, enabling you to isolate those with symptoms from those without symptoms. Now, the major point of this suit, it's an MQ, it's a mobile quarantine suit, meaning no lockdowns. You can go anywhere with this suit. You can open up the faceplate in a sterile area and you can eat, you can go to the bathroom, you can put it in a sterile container to radiate it or use ultraviolet, lots of things you can do. So people, especially people in the space business, they said, aren't you overreacting? I mean, you're overreacting. The pandemic's gone, blah, 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 blah. But if you actually look at what happened, it's pretty sobering. 98 million deaths initially from unknown pathogens in the last century, 30 million from COVID alone. How do you ignore that? We're all sitting there very comfortable right now. There's no COVID, there's no masks. We're all very comfortable. 30 million people within 2 to 3 years. Wake up. And what we're looking at when we go to places like Mars is this could be something we've never seen before. So if you go to a place like that, are you willing to take that kind of risk and ignore planetary protection? I don't think so. Where does all this stand? Well, I got to tell you this story. From 2012, when the idea first came and HyperNet paradigm first surfaced, I was doing PowerPoint presentations. Lots of PowerPoint presentations, right? That's just paper. And then in a very short period of time, you get frustrated doing PowerPoint presentations because, yeah, you get to know them pretty well. You say the same thing, so exciting. But then you get to say to yourself, I'm just going around in circles. And in a very short period of time, almost unbelievably, 2 people surfaced, one an entrepreneur and one a spacesuit fabricator. And within 6 months, we had both of these things built and ready to test. And then we started a process of testing them. So here you see a timeline for actually certifying the Mars spacesuit, all the different things that would need to be done. And here you see the same thing for this mobile quarantine suit. It's expensive and it's time consuming and you have to have it scheduled pretty accurately. And then finally we get to testing. So here's the testing, right? Okay. He's going to dance around and show you that. But the most important thing is, can you keep the CO2 out of the helmet? How safe is this? Because you've got a spacesuit with a Martian atmosphere in it. And this is the results of 3 days of testing. These are hypocapnia, danger zone of 15 millimeters of mercury. This is caution, 7.5 millimeters of mercury. And this is the average data of our current spacesuit. And here you see 3 days of testing. And yes, the system stops any of that from interacting. You know the great details about it. And then lots of things that we do. And we also did the same thing with the MQ1.
And you can do it by yourself.
So the idea is this had to be easy to get into, easy to get out of, inexpensive, and do all the things that we've just been talking about. I don't want to take too much of your time because there's a demonstration. I don't think you really want to hear me blab on much more. You'd rather see this in person. So, but we are planetaryprotect.com. We are a bunch of astronauts and scientists that have been working on this pretty much on our own nickel since 2021, 2022. And let me introduce you to some of our team. Hopefully. So Natasha works for Star Helix, got it. Thank you. Star Helix, and she's got a PhD in what again? Astrobiology, right? And she's as smart as a whip. And Olivia is one of my students, and she's wearing the MQ-1, and she's totally sealed in. It's inflated, as you can, maybe you can see, but it's inflated. There's air that's coming out over her face. Notice no openings in this suit anywhere in the front, right? Here are the openings, here are the filters. They unscrew, the air comes in from the inside, and anything that she's breathing comes out and filters on the floor. So that's where any pathogens would be deposited on the floor. That's for Natasha. I wanted to show you that what we do to measure and ensure that everything is okay, we measure the CO2 in the helmet. Now we measure the CO2 in the torso. Now to show you how accurate this is. We don't want to poison anybody in a presentation like this. Obviously, it wouldn't be good for UC Berkeley or anybody in this room, but we can kind of show you how it.
It runs. Come on,
Next going.
there it goes.
So you see, it's already almost 6,000. That's the upper limit, 6,000 parts per million of CO2. Just any amount of CO2 in that torso at all will set this off. And the helmet stays like that. So this is all done through this neck ring that we designed. You see over here. And there's no interaction between the two. In fact, the pressure in the helmet is kept slightly higher than in the torso. So any interchange that takes place is going to be down and not up. And after as many tests as we've done on this, we're absolutely convinced that this is the way to go. This is the way to do, because what we're doing is we're taking an atmosphere. I forgot to add that point. The atmosphere of Mars is cold and dry. It's perfect for heat and mass transfer. You do not need a thermos bottle when you're blowing cold, dry air into one end of this thing, removing body waste and blowing it out the other through filters, of course. So all of the heat and mass transfer is done without large tanks, without fans, without pumps, and without mass. So the projected mass of this suit is under 150 pounds with the life support system. So that's less than half than existing suits that actually can jump around.